Welcome to our webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, or evening, wherever you are calling in from. Welcome to the rendanheyi Silicon Valley Center and our free webinar series on management for the digital age. In those webinars, we highlight topics that are highly critical for leaders in both the private and the public sector. So let us not forget all the public organization as well that want to survive and stay relevant in our new digital economy. Today, we have over 100 people registered to this webinar. It's usually between 100 to 150 people, up to 200. I think we have about 300 at one. The interesting thing is that over 60% of you are new to our webinar series, which is a great news. So over 60 of you are newbies. Okay, so welcome specifically for you. 40% of you have joined before and is already part of our community, and we want to say extra welcome to you as well. It's so great to have you back. So welcome to our community for what I call the enlightened on management in the digital age. As part of our community, you can take part of 12 hours online certificate courses for a very low fee. And our customer satisfaction is actually extremely high, and you will learn very much in a very few hours. And hopefully you will get more information and feeling for that today. Topics that we offer are management principle for the digital age, or how to lead to disrupt yourself, which is one of the hardest things you can do as an organization, or more closely on business transformation, or why not a topic like how do you build and leverage on digital ecosystem, and much more. I now want to welcome our panelists for today, Steve Denning, Bill Fischer, and we will have Viren Shah coming in from GE Appliances as well. And we will let Steve and Bill present some key thoughts about the new management. And we're also going to learn a little bit more about what you will learn in a course on the same topic if you decide to do that later on. So let's start. And Steve, welcome up on the stage. And let's see. I will help Viren in. Okay, so while you start, I will just disappear for a while and see if I can help Viren come in. Okay, 1 second.
If we were to think who is the most influential thinker and theorist and practitioner of management in the early 21st century, there would be a fairly strong consensus that it would be Clayton Christensen, one of the most influential management thinkers of his time. In 2007, Clayton said the probability of the success of the iPhone, which was just about to be launched, was limited. Of course, he was wrong. It was a huge success. In 2012, after it had earned several $1 trillion for Apple, he announced that the iPhone will soon succumb to modular knockoffs. History, he said, speaks pretty loudly on that. 10 years later, it's been shown that history did not speak loudly. In fact, the future crushed history. And in fact, what he missed, his blind spot, was that the iPhone was not just another industrial era product. It was a multifunctional digital platform. It wasn't just that the rules of the game had changed, an entirely new game was being played. And that's what this course is about. What is this new game that is being played? And I'm calling it the age of digital. There are many names for it, but that's the one we're using for convenience, and it summarizes some aspects of it. It's flawed in the sense that it implies this is just about technology, but in fact, it's much more about how you use the technology, how you manage, and how you lead in this new world. And we'll cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. We'll cover the three economic ages of the human race, the four things we've learned over the past 20 years, succeed and thrive in the digital age. And let me begin with a quick history of the human race. It began when we were just foraging and killing and hunting and gathering, and we were not much more than animals. Agriculture began around 10,000 BC, and then we had different technology, plants and animals, and we farmed and we herded, and we were living in the agriculture age, and that went on for about 12,000 years. And then around 1750, we got to the industrial era, where we had new resources, steam, then oil, then electricity, and a different way of managing. We discovered bureaucracy, and that led to the industrial era of the last 250 years. And this way of managing bureaucracy worked quite well in that industrial age. It was based on efficiency and mosses and steep vertical hierarchy. And in fact, this is still the way most big organizations are run. And still using bureaucracy, and computers plus bureaucracy didn't make much change.
Steve,
and then boom.
Steve, excuse me, the capacity is bad. Do you want to take off the video for you?
Take off the screen, you mean?
No, yes, your video, not your PowerPoint presentation, but just your video.
I mean, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. There, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. So we have the digital age, and this was a massive shock. The for customers, it provided instant, frictionless, intimate, usually free value, and it was the result of new management and the internet. And for many people, it was like magic. How we work, how we communicate, how we entertain, how we read, how we listen to music, how we get about, almost everything has been changed. And what we saw is that this new way of doing things can take almost anything that's slow and impersonal and difficult and expensive and turn it into something that's quick and intimate, easy and cheap, pleasant and easy to scale. And the second thing we learned is that this digital age can help reinvent almost everything for the better. It's not just big tech, it's appliances, it's cars, it's hoteling, it's restaurants, agriculture, it's insurance. All of these firms are dramatically transforming the way each of those businesses and organizations have been run. And so it's magic for the firm too. It's rapidly scalable, has network effects, it's lower cost, it's faster. And the promise is that it's a winner take all. If you win the race, you can become immensely rich, because digital makes a ton of money. This is one reason why this is not just a facet of the industrial age. This is dramatically different in terms of the amount of money that it generates. I mean, the 5 largest firms worth more than $9 trillion, which is 40% of the US economy. And these digital firms are crushing the old industrial giants. 2000, IBM and GE were the most valuable firms on the planet, and Apple and Amazon were midgets. Now it's the reverse. IBM and GE are midgets, and Apple and Amazon huge, huge multiples of the value of those former industrial giants. This is transforming the financial landscape in a dramatic, dramatic way. And the fourth thing we've discovered is that digital must be managed differently. Most firms are trying to have a digital transformation, but most of them are failing. And the reason they are failing is that they have not grasped that this requires a different kind of management. The industrial era management simply doesn't work in the digital world. And what does work, what is the foundation of these changes, are what I contended in the age of Agile were the 3 laws of Agile: the law of the customer, the law of the small team, the law of the network, and to have a mindset that is reflecting those different ways of looking at the world. And this has been explored over the past 20 years, and it is now the foundation of all of these firms succeeding in the digital world. And just to say a word about each of those laws, first, the law of the customer. The firm is not just paying attention to the customer and saying that the customer won, but is actually obsessed with adding value to the customers. It's like a Copernican revolution in management. The customer is now the center of the commercial universe. The second law is the law of the small team, the fact that in principle, work should be done in self-organizing teams, focused on delivering value to customer, working in short cycles, and working in a very decentralized kind of way compared to traditional bureaucracy. And thirdly, the law of the network, the idea that a firm is not a hierarchy of authority, a steep hierarchy of authority with leadership just happening at the top, but a network or ecosystem of competence where leadership is happening throughout the organization, and its information and ideas can flow sideways and upwards as well as downwards. It is a very, very different conception of how an organization functions. And a case that we'll explore in some depth in the course is Microsoft, which has been going through a transition for some 15 years. And the last 7 years have been particularly dramatic since Nadella took over, because the transition that had been happening before he took over without much support from the top, now there was strong support from the top, and the whole Agile movement took off in Microsoft. And these 7 principles are really 7 steps that pretty much every organization has to deal with if they are going to have a successful digital transformation. Number 1 is getting rid of losing businesses. Sounds obvious, but it's rarely done. And Satya Nadella did this on day 1, establishing a customer-focused purpose with a very specific area of opportunity where that purpose was going to be exercised. And addressing the culture problem up front, not waiting years and thinking, well, we'll get to that at some later point. Seeing that that was central if the organization was going to have this different mindset throughout the organization, and making empathy with the customer, empathy with partners, even empathy with other parts of the organization, making empathy a keystone of how the firm was run. And drawing on this hidden Agile army that had been working away in the shadows for 5 or 7 years before he took over, they then become the army that was able to implement extremely quickly these ideas that he had. And the keystone of it is an obsession with measuring customer usage, knowing in real terms what customers are actually doing with what the products that Microsoft is putting out. Those 7 principles, I believe, are the key to successful digital transformations. And we'll learn in the course how that can be applied to your situation. And as I say, in the digital age firm, everyone is a leader. This is not leadership coming from the top. This is everyone in the firm becoming a leader. And what does that mean in practice? There are 3 core skills, which I think are central and which we will focus on in detail in the course. One is an ability to inspire change. A second is an ability to create new value. And thirdly, a capacity to navigate this transition from one world to the other. And the first skill is an ability to inspire change, because you will find, you probably already know, that in an organization, there are often people above you in the hierarchy who are not on the same page, and you need to inspire them to change. You will need to be inspiring your colleagues and partners so that you can work, in fact, as a network and not as a authority-based structure. And you will need to be inspiring your team. So this an ability to inspire people, not just to change, but to want to change is a key skill. And we'll be looking at how one goes about this. It's not just using the standard management tools of information or even the power tools of telling people what to do. This is about winning people's hearts and minds. And the most effective way of going about that is to learn how to use the power of leadership storytelling, learning how you inspire people not just to change, but to want to change. And there are three elements that we concentrate in the storytelling segment. One is strengthening empathy, understanding the person who needs to change, understanding that person in the senior leadership who doesn't seem to be on the same page. Why are they acting the way they are? Why do they say the things they do? That is as important as learning which are the stories that can inspire change, and we'll learn that most stories don't inspire change. So what is the pattern of a story that does inspire change? And then thirdly, learning who should tell the story. It may be that you are not the right person to tell the story, that maybe someone else can be more effective, and learning how to go about that. The number two skill is to become a value creator, especially how to create new businesses with new customers and create platforms and ecosystems, which is an extremely disruptive thing to be doing inside the firm. And we'll be looking at why the 20th century way of doing that, of projecting the future from the past, didn't work. And instead we work backwards from the future. Here is the case of Amazon's Kindle, which they thought through what it would be like to have a device that has these characteristics, and then work backwards from that. Well, if that's what we will be presenting to the world in 2007, what do we have to do over the next 3 years to make that happen? And we'll also have a segment with Kurt Carlson, the former CEO of SRI International, the inventor of Siri. And he will have a segment of showing how he's used this shared language and a process for creating the future in a very dynamic way, and one of the most exciting parts of the course. And digital can create platforms and ecosystems, and we'll be learning that from Bill Fischer. I'll be talking about the rendanheyi model, which has a remarkable, striking resemblance to the 3 Laws of Agile. And we'll also be hearing about General Electric appliances with Annika Steiber, who will be presenting that case in the course. And thirdly, we'll be looking at the capacity to navigate this transition from one world to another. And this involves obviously figuring out where you are and figuring out where you're heading, and then figuring out how to get from here to there. But there is a problem. And this famous story by David Foster Wallace highlights that. It tells about a couple of fish who were swimming, and one of the fish asked the other, how's the water? And the answer was, what the hell is water? That they are so embedded in the world of water that they can't even see what they are swimming in. And we see in trying to craft the future, it's quite difficult for firms to figure out what this future is look like, because it's so different from the present that they are currently working on. And typically people pursue the logical course of saying, well, where are we now, and where do we want to go, and how do we get there? But that results in typically mediocre plans. It's not a big enough idea. You really need to start from where you are heading in a bigger kind of horizon, and only then go back to see, well, how would we get to there? And in a sec, we need to apply the same thinking that we're looking at in products. We need to work backwards from the future, not trying to project the present into the future. And this digital age is a new world. Everything is different. These 3 skills that you need to thrive are skills that most people don't have. And these are something that you will get in this course and rarely anywhere else in the world. And it's it goes 4 hours in each of 3 days. The first day is focused on the higher case and leadership storytelling. Then we'll get on to creating new businesses on the second segment. And the third segment is on learning how to navigate the course. And what's it like to take the course? Is this a practical course? Is it useful? We did get a couple of interviews, conversations with a couple of the participants from Ericsson and from Volvo Cars who took the course in April. And this is the conversation that we had about what the course meant to them.
I found it extremely easy to apply to the situation where I am, with the responsibility I have for say transformation for a really large organization. It was very easy to take it from what was presented to say, but this is applicable to what we're discussing internally. I really like the format of the course. Also, I mean, you get a very condensed overview, and at least I find it extremely valuable to get that overview. Again, you can always dig deeper and read hundreds of pages and 20, 30 different articles, but very often you need an introduction. Say you need to open the door to this universe, understanding a bit more what this is about, and say, okay, is this applicable, or should I focus more on this?
I really enjoyed the storytelling sessions, where we looked into how to change people's minds by telling a good story as a background to kind of create a new way of understanding the visionary state you want to achieve. I actually used my storytelling setup in a couple of meetings in our company. So surprisingly that worked well. So I was really happy.
Kurt's session, I think, was very inspiring from understanding how they had engaged the organization.
Right.
How he as a executive in a way had been a part of being a good, fantastic role model, and really I mean, the way he framed it, the way they work with it has definitely been something that, wow, I mean, we talk about it and we might sometimes overcomplicate things, but again, it can actually be quite simple means.
So there you get a sense of what it's like to participate in the course and the kind of impact that it can have in your work. So now we're going to turn to Bill Fischer, who will talk about the hire and ecosystems and what that means for this age of digital. Bill.
Okay, thanks, Steve. It's good to be here with you. I'm particularly, I want to just shout out to Ralph, my old comrade in arms, who worked with me together as a team on so many executive programs. I'm so delighted that you're here. Let me tell you a little bit about hire, because hire has become it's been mentioned several times. We hear about rendanheyi, and let me go to basically give you an idea of what one organization that's been quite influential in these transformations looks like. So if and particularly as a leader in thinking about not only how do you create more autonomy within a complex organization, but also how do you build ecosystems. Hire has a philosophy. Annika mentioned it right at the beginning. It's called rendanheyi, and it's a philosophy that has three guiding principles. The first is to create a great user experience. That's the Dan in rendanheyi. And you know, if you go back to Peter Drucker's writing, Drucker said the purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer, plain and simple. So what Hire has done, Hire is a home appliance manufacturer. You know, this is an old economy industry. This is not Silicon Valley. This is not kids running around in flip-flops. This is people, 70,000 people making real things. And so the complexity of trying to revitalize an organization like this is really formidable. And what Hire has chosen to do is to begin with what Drucker said. Let's start with the customer. That's the purpose. The second, however, the second general principle is the way we're going to do this is through entrepreneurship. That's the REN. We're going to create entrepreneurship in our complex, formerly bureaucratic organization. that's going to be able to get close to the customer and understand them perhaps better than they understand themselves. And again, back to Drucker. Drucker says entrepreneurship and innovation is all about knowing rather than doing. It's knowing more about the customer, it's knowing more about what's going on in our world, and then being able to respond effectively. And so that's this second principle. That's how we're going to do it. And then Chairman Jung Rae Min, who is the real architect of rendanheyi, added a third general principle, and that is, if we're going to act like entrepreneurs and we're going to be thought of as entrepreneurs, then we ought to be rewarded as entrepreneurs. And so what he built in was the idea that aligning user value should be shared with those who create the value. And those three guiding principles really run through everything as Hire has done over the last 40 years. So when you think about what they're doing, they're building an organization where customer experience and the solutions they produce is really critical, right? Customer experience is much more important than just the solutions that they produce. Steve pointed out that this is what Clay Christensen got wrong when he looked at the iPhone. It wasn't just another solution. It was a whole customer experience. And in order to do that, Hire has built an organization that naturally creates much more openness and inclusiveness, both inside the organization and outside. They are also pushing decision-making down so low in the organization that they no longer have a unit doing corporate strategy. Corporate strategy is designed at the customer interface, not in some suite of rooms far removed from the customer. And as a result, they move faster and they're much better informed about what's going on in their marketplace. And all of this means that they're acting much more like a startup than as a conventional organization. I think one of the things that's in the consequence of this is they have a higher level of individual engagement in the life of the organization, more energy, more ideas, okay? So it's an extreme example, right? Not everyone has done what Hire has done. It's an old company in an old industry and with a lot of people, a very complex organization, but it's taken more extreme choices than anyone else we've seen. But in employee entrepreneurship, everybody's an entrepreneur. There are no longer standard titles. They've defunctionalized the organization. The organization is now broken down into small micro enterprises that move faster, get closer to the customer, and they are redistributing value. They say that the customer pays your salary, and that's pretty close to what actually happens. They've been doing this for 40 years. So the lessons that they've learned have accrued and we think are quite valuable. We think they're a unique resource. And they've tended to go all in rather than incremental. So this is not a piece of Hire doing this to see if it works or not. This is everybody, all in, all at the same time. One of the results of this through ecosystems is that they're building a future where they see partnerships as their most important asset in the future. And that's not brands, not intellectual property, but the relationships they have with ecosystem partners. And so they're an extreme, but we use this extreme to try to highlight what might be possible in your organization, and then ask you what are the trade-offs you're unwilling to make as you go forward so that you can sort of customize these lessons to your own situation. There's also a lot of other organizations that are presently experimenting. Annika has done a lot of work with General Electric Appliances, Fujitsu Europe, Robert Bosch Power Tool Division, Vicusville, which is a Russian specialty food chain of 1,500 outlets, Buurtzorg, the Dutch home-based healthcare providers, Morningstar, a tomato products packaging company in California, Zappos, the shoe company that's been in the news so often, a large European bank. I think Annika would add Google, and I think Steve would add Microsoft. They're not necessarily any of them following exactly what Hire is doing, but they're influenced by it. And so the illustration of Hire allows us to use a model that ties a lot of different organizational experiences together. If you think about what Steve spoke about with respect to the digital age, Here it is, the law of the customer, the first guiding principle. The first guiding principle is great customer experience. The law of the small team, micro enterprises. We're going to redesign the organization so that effectively lives our values. And then the law of the network. We're building, this is all about building ecosystems. So if you think about what Hire is doing, what they're really doing is they're on their way to something bigger. And what that means is that it's, in the end, it's their ability to partner with others so that they can access different unfamiliar expertise domains that will ultimately be their biggest advantage. And in order to do that, they are building micro enterprises that are able to evolve and evolve in parallel with others. They are building micro enterprises that are sharing value so that everyone has an incentive, a real incentive to be co-creators. And their belief is that if they do this, they'll move up that sort of curvy diagonal and have ecosystem growth where the ecosystem is healthy because everybody shares great opportunities. So just a short, thumbnail sketch of what Hire is doing. And now I'm going to turn this back to Annika.
Thank you very much. So we have a very distinguished guest with us today that live and breathe business transformation, rendanheyi, and also have been taking all our courses that we have offered so far. And he's the Chief Digital Officer at GE Appliances, Viren Shah. Welcome. I would love to ask you what your perception is about, why you think that those courses could actually contribute to you and your work, because you are pretty advanced. I mean, you've already done a massive transformation. So how would you say that those courses can help you, even if you started your transformation process?
Thank you, first of all, Annika, for inviting me to share our thoughts. I would say there's always something we can learn. That's never changed. And I think, to me, that's a lot about what rendanheyi is. It's a constant learning and evolution process. But personally, what I would say is these classes, which you all have organized, which we are very thankful for, especially with distinguished guests like Steve and Bill. What we learn is the how, because just like, Henrik was saying, is like we can read a long book, but the ability to say just the NABC approach that was taught during the class, it's so simple, it's so easy, and it allows you to think in a certain way. And I think it allows you to apply. The co-creation aspect that was shared as part of the ecosystem, what does that really mean? And how do you go about it? The cross-functional team example from Bosch. Now, it is very easy to say, we'll just create a small team and get it done. But the ability to say, how do you actually commit to it and learn from the Bosch example? But most importantly, when you're, I've done enough transformations, but the whole storytelling aspect of it was quite intriguing to me. So it's, for me, all these different aspects that I learned in the class were pretty powerful because it brings it together to say, once you finish this class and you go back to your desk, you can actually do something different. And that, to me, is the power of attending these courses. Just because, one, being part of Hire, we are living and breathing this rendanheyi concept. But I truly believe for every individual, for it to cascade down, I think this course offers a very short, it's not a lot of time commitment, and it allows you to apply many of the principles and some new ones that I didn't know about.
Thank you so much, Varun. And if you have time, I would love you to stay and maybe all participants, if you have questions also to Varun, specifically in G Appliances as a Chief Digital Officer, a part of a huge business transformation that have been going on for years now and been very successful. Then if you have time, Varun, I would great if you can stay for a couple of minutes so they can ask you questions as well. I think, thank you. So by that, I would say that we will start now our official sort of Q&A. And if you want, please not use the chat, but use the Q&A so I can separate chat comments and real questions that you might have as a participant, and take the opportunity to ask questions. I must say I read a small journal or paper from McKinsey yesterday, where they pinpointed about the Chinese companies and ended with the statement that in order to position yourself to survive now, you have to understand the Chinese way of building a digital ecosystem. And they are, I would say, the leader in the world doing that right now. So I must say, I personally feel very blessed. I feel absolutely blessed to be able to learn from G Appliances, from Hire, from Microsoft, from those examples that we've seen, because it's so new, it's so different, and I think it might be hard sometimes to understand how different this new management model is. Okay, so let me see if you have any questions. I don't have any questions in my Q&A. Just start asking questions, please, so we can let your voice be heard. Steve, you are muted.
We might have a word from Thomas Julie, who was in the audience, I think, and
yes,
had some thoughts on participated in the earlier version of the course and has some insights.
Okay, so Thomas, yes, I'm on the call. Okay, great. So do you have any specific comment that you would like us to bring up, or a question that you would like to have asked?
Maybe, Anika, I can just provoke some thoughts.
Okay, so Thomas, you cannot use your audio. You're part of the participants, but we have a question. Yeah, so Byron, why don't we start with you and your comment? Then we have a hand raised by Bill Fischer, and we have a question now from Anshu.
Yeah,
from India.
The way I would say for the audience to think about it is, if you are wanting to thrive and not just survive, what are you doing differently? And if you ask me, if the answer is the same that we were doing yesterday, then truly we need to start learning about ecosystems. Truly we need to start learning about how to find the white space, because I will say this, it's very interesting. We are relying so much on online. And if you are specifically part of a CPG group or a CPG company, online actually is a race just down towards the bottom price. Online actually diminishes the value you can truly create for your customer. And most companies are actually thinking, oh, let's go online more and more. And unless you are able to truly create partnerships, perform in an ecosystem, and truly deliver more value, that'll be a struggle. And I think I would just want to provoke some thoughts to say that if you are just thinking one piece of the puzzle, that's why you need to find these white spaces. So just wanted to provoke some thoughts, if that provokes some questions of why you should attend this course.
Right. Fantastic. Bill, you had your hand raised, and we have several questions now in our window that I want to bring up.
So let's go to the questions, and then if there's time, I want to ask Byron a question. So
okay, so great. So Anju from India, so he asked, how did you work on change management for digital transformation? Is this question to Byron, Anju? I guess so. How did you work on change management? Yes. So how did you work on change management for digital transformation?
Well, I think I would say the transformation is never done. So I would not say we are done. But what I would truly say, going back to, is identify and define why I need to change and what is the change for. And if you ask me, that's probably the most important piece of the change management strategy, because it was all about value driven. Because if it's not, actually, believe it or not, I'm presenting in about 2 hours, the change we did for the last 3-4 years and the value we have delivered. In essence, that's exactly what I would say you begin with, is what's in it. And going back to, I'm going to refer to the course again, I wish I knew the NABC approach then and I would have applied it, but what's the need and what's my approach and what's the benefit? And I think that's probably the best way to do that.
And here we have a related question, again to Byron. What aspect in the course, this is from Linus, what aspect in the course was new to you regarding creating new businesses?
How do you find the white space? And that to me was the one, and the other one is the ability to co-create. And you know, Anika, how I get on my sandbox of shared value creation. And I think those were the two big things I would say were new to me.
Right. So we have one question here from Donald, and I think this is to Steve. What is some recommended pre-work we should think about to better prep for and get the most from the course?
Well, I would suggest you might glance at my book, The Age of Agile, which is still very relevant, and the articles in Forbes that I've written over the past, particularly over the last months, have been spelling out essentially the main elements of the course and my forthcoming book, so they would give you a good sense of. But we will also, to those who've registered, we'll be sending out a package of readings about 2 weeks prior to the course, and so you'll be able to get that package and be fully prepared. I would also like to say on change management, if you are, it's kind of an oxymoron, a contradiction. If you are not managing change, you are not managing. The world now is in rapid transformation, and the whole change management's a really 20th century term, with the assumption that for the most part it's just more of the same and a little bit of stuff going on at the margins. That is not at all the situation in firms that are in touch with the actual marketplace. They have to be rapidly innovating and improving on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. So drop the word change management from your vocabulary would be my suggestion.
And if I can add to that, I mean, the way of transforming will also be presented in different ways, that you can choose different paths on how to do it. It could be a bottom-up process, it could be a top-down process, it could be a combination. And we will go through several of those, and you will learn in detail as well how it was done. And the pre-work, as Steve said, you will get an exclusive list of readings that, as Henrik from Ericsson mentioned, will guide you quicker to some of the best literature, maybe to read and get a faster grip on what's actually you need to control right now. We have a comment now from Thomas Julie from Alliance, and he said, regarding my experience, sorry Thomas for reading this for you, regarding my experience of the course, it is not like yet another course where you are learning something new. This course is transforming in the sense that it takes you on a personal journey of transformation. If you choose to do so, the dialogue with speakers and other participants make this possible, and it helps to customize the course to your needs. I highly recommend the course to everyone who is curious about what it takes to break old patterns and develop an agile and digital mindset. Fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. And I also send out the link. If you do want to register to the course, it's in the chat window. Do we have any more questions, or do we want Professor Bill Fischer? Maybe you should ask a question to Byron now then.
Okay, let me do that. Byron, you mentioned the Bosch cross-functional teams as something that caught your attention. I think one of the great advantages of programs like this is the opportunity to learn from other organizations, sometimes, you know, consciously and other times unconsciously because they're sitting around you or that. And I was also struck by how Bosch created cross-functional teams. And I was wondering, what was it that got your attention?
The commitment aspect of it, because to me, many a times, most organizations try something new and say, oh, let's give it a go, just as if it's a extracurricular activity. And then, oh, if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we'll put them back in where they are, you know. Being in information technology, I've been part of many such programs in my career. But I think Bosch drastically changing the metrics, drastically changing the way they work, drastically changing, again, however, whichever way they structured, some will work, some will not work, they will evolve, but just the commitment from the organization to say, this is a new way and this is the way we are going to go, to me was the most important aspect of it, is how the organization committed and said, we are in this together. Yes, it's not going to be perfect, but we'll figure it out. But this is the approach we should be taking because it's going to deliver the results. And if we don't do this, we cannot thrive. And I think that to me struck the most about it. You know, will they rejig of how they do it 2 years from now? Probably, because they'll find some what worked, what did work, because that's kind of part of this evolution. But just the fact that they, as a whole organization, committed and changed the metrics and the behavior and the rewards for those behavior was pretty mind-boggling.
Yes, I would agree completely. And of course, we have everybody here at a disadvantage because we know about Bosch and you don't, but you'll learn about it. But here's, for me, this was an organization that was highly bureaucratic, highly hierarchical, and they went to these autonomous quasi self-organizing teams. And originally, the idea was to decentralize and make the teams sort of smaller replicas of what they had before. But the people in the organization, both the people who were designing this transformation, the people who were part of it, took this seriously. They took the autonomy part seriously, and they said, no, we're gonna organize around applications. We're not gonna organize around the old, categories. We're gonna organize around applications of our power tools. And my impression is nobody ever thought of this before, but it's genius. It really works for them. So so not only putting this process in place, but then having the courage to allow everybody to take control of the process. That's exceptional, I think.
Yeah. And for a company that is part of a culture that is highly regimented, highly structured, and just to say now you have autonomy, I think the first 1 month, they probably were lost a little bit too. It's like, what am I doing today, right? So I bet you it wasn't easy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So we have actually a great question coming in. It's from Lennart, Stockholm. This is, I think, maybe something that all of you should comment. So Lennart's right. My impression experience is that the law of the small team compared to law of customer network might be the part causing most hesitation and resistance among today's high-level executives. And we should know that Lennart is working with high executives in Sweden. If you have spent decades of your life on reaching this highly respected level, how do you convince high-level executives to trust more self-managed teams further down in the organization? What is step one? What is your experience? Should we start with Steve this time?
Yeah, this is a very common problem, maybe even universal, that some people in the hierarchy, particularly people higher up, have worked in a different world, and they're like the fish. The water in which they've lived in is the bureaucracy, and it's difficult for them to imagine a different world. And the second day of the course is actually the first day of the course is aimed directly at showing you how to deal with this situation. How do you deal with a high-level executive who's based their whole life, their whole career on doing it? And the problem is not insoluble. It may not be insoluble. It may not be soluble in one day, but we can show you the dynamics of how I and others have done this in other organizations. And it does, first of all, mean understanding, having some empathy for this high-level executive, why they have this point of view, why they have these particular attitudes, why they're acting in the way they are, and then finding a way to get them to think differently with a story that will spark their imagination. And typically this is a story about someone similar to them who viewed the same situation and didn't realize the potential of acting differently. But when they did make the change, it was dramatic. And that story can start to spark a different story in their mind and start to spark different behavior. And so we look in some depth as to how to orchestrate those kinds of scenarios in order to have a constructive outcome.
I think that's a great comment. So one is to inspire for change. But before I take you, Bill, I would like Byron to comment on this, because one of the thing I bring up about the GE Appliance case and one success factor behind your transformation, I think, even if it's maybe not outspoken that much, was the shift of the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure you can comment on it, but can you say everything?
Well, I wouldn't say. I think our CEO has been out there for the last 7-8 years. So because he was thinking of connected in 2011 and IoT in 2011, not just yesterday. So he's been a very thought leader just in general. But what I would say is, for me, it's more about, there are two ways to motivate executives. One is, hey, what's the reward? And, believe it or not, I was talking this to somebody. Most executives, their lifespan is 3 to 5 years, okay? And especially in very senior roles. And so if you tell them, hey, this is going to be the best thing after 3 years or 5 years, I don't know, the motivation is high. The other motivation is the perspective of what if we don't do it? And I think in current scenario where the evolution is fast, I think that don't do it probably is also a great way to say, if we don't do it, this is what could happen. And I think I actually would say that the best way to do this is, I use the Amazon, because they said, okay, I have the net, first what they did is they found a lot of customers with common needs and they served their needs. Then they took the same needs and found new customers globally and internationally in other countries. So basically it was either vertical or it was horizontal, right? The way I would say is the exponential growth is the third dimension, which is you have to find net new needs and net new customers. And unless we are doing that, the exponential growth is not there. And every executive enjoys exponential growth. So for me, the way to explain to executives is just help them understand the vertical way is saturated. The horizontal way is saturated. The third way is the best way, and that's the exponential growth.
Sorry, I got, Bill, so sorry, but we have limited time. We got a new question. I'm sorry, Bill, maybe you can answer this. We are coming with a group from Bank of the West and are very excited. Question is, will we be able to use our real case problems in the course? Steve and Bill.
Absolutely. The course is governed by Chatham House rules, which means that you can use everything you learn in the course, but you're not cited, you're not permitted to cite who told you that, or if it's company specific. So we would suggest caution, and then you don't reveal super confidential information, but certainly the whole thrust of the course and what we did in February and in April was to work on real case problems from within the companies.
Right. Bill, do you want to say some last word? No? Okay, so we have more or less 1 minute left, and so I have been sending out the link to read more about the course if you would like to take the opportunity. There will be limited spots, and I can tell you we don't want too big groups, so it's limited spots available. So if you are interested and think this could be something really valuable for you, you should definitely sign up as soon as possible. The course is on October 27. It's only 4 hours a week over 3 weeks. It's intending to be part of your workday, so you don't have to travel anywhere. You don't have to leave your work for a lot of hours and take vacation or whatever. So this is to be part of your learn on your job, more or less, an integrated part of your work. So we hope to see you. Do we have any final comments from, should we start with Bill? Just say something and from then end with Steve, and then we end it.
So in the spirit of learning, I've learned a lot just by this short interaction. Just think what we can do with 3 days in a course.
Right.
That's the real spirit. It's co-learning. It's not like we have all the answers. It's learning together, and the experience that some of the participants bring is just as valuable as anything that we bring.
Right. And Byron, any final word from you? And you are going to present in an hour now the value creation from your transformation. So exciting.
No, thanks a lot. Thank you for inviting me and sharing my few thoughts.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and hope to see you soon. It was fantastic to meet you all, and keep up the good work, and welcome to our community. Bye.